Today I want to talk about some of the things that shocked me when I first moved to China, and I've invited a couple of other YouTubers on here to talk about some of the things that shocked them when they first moved to China. Whenever you move to a new country and culture, it is common to notice differences, and some of these differences can be shocking. This video will point out a few things that often shock foreigners when they first arrive. Things can be shocking in a good way or a bad way. So let's jump right in and find out what is most shocking about China. One of the things we always think about when we think about China is big cities and lots of people. My friend Ben shows a different side of things on his YouTube channel, and here's something that shocked him about China.
Yo, this is Ben Cubbage from elevatedtrips.com. I have lived in Western China for the last 12 years doing an adventure travel business. Right now I'm standing at 2,400 meters looking at Jade Dragon Snow Mountain in Yunnan province. And what shocked me most about China is what I'm standing here looking at is just the openness and the remoteness. Most people, when they think of China, they think Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Chengdu, these big mega cities, 10 million people, 20 million people, all kind of cramming together in traffic and smog. But actually, Western China is just big and beautiful and open. For instance, the province where I live in is bigger in area than France and has only about 5 million people in the whole province. There's actually more yaks where I live than there are people. And so I love that kind of remote, wild, sparsely populated feel, and China still has those places in Western China.
While most foreigners will have a different experience than Ben, it is still really amazing to follow his journeys, and I would love to hire him as a guide one day. Since this video is part of my 12 Years in China series, I will also share some of the things that shocked me when I first arrived here. So number 11 on this list is meat markets. Coming from the US, where everything is sanitized and individually wrapped, I was overwhelmed the first time I entered a meat market. Local markets usually have a section for meat, and it is oftentimes out in the open and unrefrigerated. The first time I entered one of these markets, on a hot September day, it really shocked me. Now I'm less bothered by it, and many local people believe the meat is actually fresher because it hasn't been processed with chemicals to preserve the meat for weeks or months. This is one shocking thing that I've learned to live with, but the smell of the meat section can still be overwhelming at times. Okay, less about buying food and more about eating it. Coming in at number 10 on our list is food in festivals. Busayo AD will talk about what shocked her about festivals in China.
Hi everyone, my name is Busayo AD, African native, and I lived in China for about 7 years. There were some things that shocked me moving from Nigeria to like a totally different culture. I moved to a city where they had very few foreigners, and I was like the only black person in my city. So I was shocked by how people were just staring at me. It was like, whoa, really? Another thing that shocked me while living in China is the wide variety of food. I mean, you find like different food in different cultures, yeah, but China is like, I would say like it's the hub of food, to be honest, because there are different provinces, and different provinces have their different taste of food. So another thing I'm gonna say that was quite shocking is how many festivals are being celebrated. I was shocked because like almost every time we're having like public holidays, each day I leave my house, there was something to watch. There was always something to see on the street. There was something to just do. So it was quite easy to vlog while I was in China because there was always something happening. So that was quite shocking for me. I just have a feeling that if you are in China, you never get bored. You know what I mean? But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I have lots and lots of videos on my channel, so if you want to see that, just subscribe to my channel.
I have to agree with her on this point. Chinese people love to eat and celebrate. There are a lot of national festivals and even more local ones, which means you can party all the time if you want to. Which brings us to our next point on the list. If you are eating and drinking at a party or celebration, then of course you're going to have to use the bathroom. So number 9 on our list is squat toilets. This seems to be on everyone's list, and it is a bit of a cliche now, but if you've never seen a squat toilet, it will shock you. I don't like using them because I have a bad knee, but I will say squat toilets are actually more sanitary when you think about it, because you don't have to touch anything. Anyways, I don't want to talk about that beyond this, so let's move on to our next point. But before we move on, be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel and all the other YouTubers who send in their opinions about things that shocked them in China. Alright, next on the list is Noah, and he wants to talk about something that shocked him when he first came to China, and something I can actually relate to because I'm from a small town in the US.
大家好 My name is Noah Kartha, and I've lived in China for over 3 years. One of the things that shocked me the most when I moved to China was the spatial vastness of the cities here. The impression that we all get of China from the images that are put out there are this huge country full of sprawling cities with big massive skyscrapers all over the place. And now it's one thing to see the pictures and videos, but to actually come here and see it with your own eyes is entirely another. The first city that I lived in when I moved to mainland China was Harbin. It's the capital of the northernmost province in China. It's not even one of the top 10 largest or wealthiest cities in this country. But in Harbin, as in many other cities in this country that I visited, I get this feeling like I'm this tiny dot in the middle of this megalopolis. One factor that contributes to that is the skyscrapers. They are ginormous and they're everywhere. You'll often find that the living communities in this country are this entire block of massive skyscrapers, 10, 20, 30 stories tall. And then you go inside the buildings, like you go inside the mall, and the malls here are mini cities in and unto themselves. In fact, on one of the videos on my channel, I visit the largest building in the world in terms of floor area, located in Chengdu City. Inside it, it has a mall, 5-star hotel, water park, just to name a few. If you're interested in checking out that video, as well as my other grand adventures in China, make sure to check out my channel, Noah Kartha.
Chinese cities can be really impressive and even overwhelming at times, but luckily number 7 on our list is transportation. Two things are really impressive and even shocking about China's transportation systems. First is public transportation within cities. Like Noah said, cities can be very large, but most of them have good public transportation, which includes subways, buses, and ride-sharing options. One of the things that shocked me when I first visited a major city in China like Shanghai or Beijing was just how easy it was to get around, and that was 12 years ago. Things have only improved since then, and I'm still shocked when I get to a small city that has 4 or 5 subway lines. In terms of national transportation, it is even more shocking. I recently did a video about China's high-speed rails and just how developed they are now. If you want to see the scale of the high-speed rails, check out that video after this one. But it's not just the rail system, it's also airports and highways. In the last 12 years, China has built more highways than any other country, and according to the government, it now has the most highways in the world. All these highways, trains, and planes connect this vast country, which brings us to our next point. King wants to talk about some of the things that have shocked him, which include language and diversity.
Hi, I go by the name KWESI on YouTube. You can check me out. I've been living and working in China for some time now, and when I moved to China, I was shocked by this experience, the diversity of the Chinese people. Back home in my home country, Ghana, I thought China as a country was just one group of people. I realized that China is made up of different ethnic groups. And what is shocking about this experience is that every ethnic group has its own dialect. Did you know that? Yes, every ethnic group in China has its own dialect, and every locality, for example, I live in Weihai. The city Weihai has its own local dialect, which is called the local Hua, the Weihai Hua, which is different from that of Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. This is so shocking, guys. You can only experience this when you move to China to learn more about the Chinese culture. If you want to see more about my experiences, check me out on my YouTube channel, KWESI. Peace out.
It is easy to look at China and think it is one big monocultural society, but like King said, that isn't the case. There is diversity here, especially in language. And speaking of diversity, the next thing on the list is one that shocks a lot of people, and it really shocked me when I moved here, and that is the cost of living. This can be shocking because it can be really high or really low depending on where you live. When I first moved to China, I was in a small city called Shaoxing and I wasn't making very much money, but despite my salary, I was still able to travel and even save a little bit. Nowadays, with all the inflation and living in Beijing, I'm shocked at how much I spend each month on food and rent. Like everywhere, cost of living depends on your own lifestyle and spending habits. China now has some of the most expensive cities in Asia, and it can cost a lot of money to live in those big cities. But if you're willing to live in a smaller city, it can actually be very affordable. Speaking of living in a more affordable city, my friend Becky has the next point on this list coming in at number 4.
Hey guys, I'm Becky, an American that's been living in China for more than 13 years. Now this may surprise you, but actually living in China is incredibly convenient. China is basically a cashless society. I personally haven't touched cash in 4 or 5 years, and everything is on our phone or, my transportation card and subway and buses. I just use my watch. When you go to a restaurant, you just scan a QR code, the menu pops up. If you can't speak Chinese, you can see all the pictures, you just press what you want and the food comes to you without having to find a waiter. Even things like going to see my doctor. On WeChat, I just make an appointment on a little mini app. I get my test results on the mini app. If I need medicine, a trained, official, certified pharmacist will deliver it to my house. You can basically get anything delivered these days in China. So I know people think living in China might be very difficult because of the language and the culture, but actually it's incredibly convenient. And when you live here, you get so used to the conveniences so quickly that it's actually more of a culture shock when you go to other countries. So, believe it or not, China is an incredibly convenient country. If you're interested in following an American learning the fastest racket sport in the world, please check out my YouTube channel, Badminton Becky, and you can find me at Badminton Becky on all the socials.
I feel like I've talked about this point in previous videos, but it is still really shocking. Unfortunately, this is something I didn't really experience when I first arrived because WeChat and most apps weren't even created yet. But for anyone that arrives now, it must be very shocking to experience. Speaking of things that are shocking, you've made it this far into the video and you haven't hit the like button and subscribed yet. Be sure to hit the subscribe button because we have 2 more YouTubers that want to share something that shocked them when they arrived in China. Up next is Harvey adding on to Becky's point about convenience and how everything is digitalized here.
What shocked me the most about living in China, right, when I first arrived here, was just how digital everything is. From renting a bike to paying someone on the street to pick your ears for you. Everything is done online. And I'll give you an example, right? So back home in the UK, I used to work in banking for a Fortune 500 company. And I remember coming here and it was my first week out of quarantine. And I was walking past Lujiazui station underneath Shanghai Tower, and there was this girl playing the guitar and singing the most beautiful song. And I remember people walking by and instantaneously tipping her just by scanning her QR code. And I remember thinking to myself, back home in London, if I walked past someone playing some music on the street and I wanted to give them cash, unless I had the actual physical cash on me, I wouldn't be able to do that. Even my old employer had no QR code function or anything like that. And since then, China's advancement in technology has just baffled me day by day.
Enough about the digital aspects in China, let's talk more about the people. Yvonne from GoYvon and my lovely wife has an interesting point for number 2.
Hi, my name is Yvonne from the channel GoYvon. And one of the things that really shocked me when I first came to China, and that still kind of shocks me, is the fact that people will ask me very personal questions, or at least those questions are personal in my opinion. They would ask me if I'm married, how much money I make, how much I pay for rent, whether I have or want to have kids. In my opinion, those are very personal, and I wouldn't answer them if a stranger just walked up to me and asked me those questions. If you want to see what else shocked me when I first came to China, check out my video that I made about this.
I also get some of these questions, but I think people are just more willing to talk with Yvonne, and her Mandarin is much better than mine, which means people tend to engage with her more. But that doesn't mean people don't talk to me, and that brings us to our last point. Coming in at number 1 on this list is the friendly and helpful people. I was really shocked how helpful and how friendly people are on the streets. I remember the first day I arrived in China and I didn't speak a word of Chinese and I was completely lost. I talked with a few people and was able to find my way. It was actually a police officer who ended up being the most helpful. I remember I was scared to approach him, but once I did, he spoke a little English and helped me find a hotel. Since that first day, I have met many other people that are helpful and friendly, oftentimes asking personal questions or just being curious about my life. Although things have changed over time and not everyone is friendly now, overall, I'm still shocked by how nice people are here. Don't forget to check the other YouTubers' channels out. You can find the links in the description down below. And if you want to see another video with some other foreigners talking about why they love living in China, you can click here, and I will see you over there in that video. Bye bye!